What do you feel like talking about? Let's go back to your calls. John in Commerce. Hey, John.
Hey, Bob.
Hey.
Hey, I wanted to discuss the Greta Thunberg discussion you had. You heard a lot of arguments about it seems you're saying climate science has been made many inaccurate predictions in the past, and so I think this is reason. In fact, you said that they've made 0 correct predictions, which seems pretty strong.
I went through a list of 41 different predictions that they've made, and they've been wrong on all 41 of those predictions. That doesn't mean that there's not anything ever that they may have predicted that was right, but as it relates to the big dire predictions about here's what's going to happen to the earth, they've been pretty much consistently wrong, I would say.
Okay, so you wouldn't go so strong as to say 0 correct predictions.
Well, I mean, they can predict that it's going to be sunny tomorrow, and they may be right about that. So,
well, I mean,
I'm talking about when I say that they're not right about any of their predictions. I'm talking about the big catastrophic predictions of we're going to have worldwide famine, we're going to have an ice age, we're going to have no Arctic ice by 2015, we're going to have a record high number of hurricanes and higher intensity hurricanes hitting the United States than ever before, the increases in tornadoes and all of those kinds of catastrophic predictions of what they say is going to come. What I'm saying is in those predictions, they have been all wrong.
Okay, so let's talk about those predictions, and I want to be a little careful because I think it's easy to throw out really quickly a lot of different supposed false predictions that have different sources from which they come, that have different contexts, that have to be looked up and really broken down. It's kind of a debater's tactic, I think, and I know you're on the air, and it's not like you can list out all kinds of footnotes and everything, but let's take, for instance, your claim that they predicted we would have by now an ice age, okay? Because actually, I called you years back in 2012, and you made the same point. And when you said that, I said, you offered a citation, and I said, you said, here comes an ice age. And I said, okay, keep reading. What does it say after that? And you didn't have the rest of the quote. And what I told you, as I said, if you had the rest of the quote, you would see that it says in 20,000 years. Because it's talking about the orbit of the Earth and how that it affects the climate. And in 20,000 years, when the orbit returns to what it was, say, another 20,000 years back, we would expect an ice age. Now, I don't know if you have some other source that is claiming that there would be an ice age.
Here's what I would do, because I'll be honest with you, John. If you're talking about some source that you've held on to since 2012, and I don't know, I don't remember exactly which particular source you're referring to, so I don't know. What I point out when I talk about ice age is that you can go back and you can see for yourself, whether it's Time Magazine, whether it's Newsweek, whether it's the main newspapers of this country, you saw story after story after story about the ice age is coming, and many of these stories talking about during our lifetimes. I have cited stories, and as a matter of fact, Climate Depot has collected several of these as well, documented cases in the media from climate scientist people who are saying that ice ages are coming. One of them, ice age was supposed to hit us by 2000. One of them said we were going to have an ice age by 2020. Several of them said that the ice age is coming and coming fairly soon. They talked about current countries of the world and the millions and billions of people that will die from this ice age. It's not talking about 20,000 years in the future. There were a whole boatload of stories about the coming ice age and talking about what's happening in people's own lives in their lifetimes. The In Search Of clip that I played from Leonard Nimoy from 1978, the year I graduated high school, okay, talking about within our lifetimes, here's what will happen, using the words within our lifetimes. So if you, John, happen to go through all the resources I've used, and one of those resources happen to be something that later on in the story or whatever, it references that they're talking about 20,000 years, I can't speak to that. If I saw something like that now, and I knew that that was there, I would never use that as a resource. So it sounds like you've kind of gone through and cherry-picked and found something that maybe you got me on to somehow undo the claim that there was a call for an ice age that was coming. That's just not true.
No, what happened was I asked you for your source on the ice age. You gave it to me, and I thought, I think that's the one that says 20,000 years. But, I'll look, and you said you'd look into it. And I looked into it, and it was 20,000 years, and it does specifically say, I'm not counting anthropogenic effects. I'm not talking about greenhouse gases. I'm only talking about natural stuff. And so that source, now, what you did right there in your past... I don't know that particular source that you're talking about. If you're talking about 2012, this is 7. I understand that, but I'm just telling you, after 7 years, I don't remember what source you're talking about. Okay. Well, it was Science Magazine, December 10th, 1976. That was the one you gave me,
and that may very well be the case. Okay, John. Let me make this point real quick, and then I'll let you make the rest of your point. Okay. I am not going to tell you that it's impossible that of all of the sources I come up with about things, that there might be a source that I come up with that I use that, oh, no, wait a minute here, there's more to that particular source, and then it's like, oh, well, wait a minute, maybe I shouldn't use that source. Because I got to tell you, when I do my research, and I do a lot of research on this show, and I do a lot of research for my apologetics, there are many times where I'll come across a particular source for something and I'll look at it. And then, like, for example, the example that you just gave, okay? If I'm looking at a source and I see something and then later on I see, or the next paragraph or whatever, and it says in 20,000 years, I would never in a million years use that source. There's all kinds of sources I throw out, but every once in a while there's going to be a source that maybe I should have thrown out that I didn't. Now, if you want to bust me on it 7 years later, okay, fine. But that is not my only source. It's nowhere close to my only source. My general point is that back in the 1970s, the environmentalists were screaming global cooling. Here comes the next ice age. And they were saying it was going to be happening during our lifetimes. If one of the sources I cited for that happened to be somebody who was saying it was happening in 20,000 years, then that's my bad. You got me. But that's mistakes like that slipping through the cracks don't undo the fact that what I'm saying about the 1970s is true.
Okay. Let me make it the larger point, I guess. I mean, I understand that, Newsweek and Time Magazine and popular people, like you quoted Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who said the Earth could be uninhabitable in 12 years. And those statements are incorrect. And if you point to those, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has misrepresented the science with this statement. Okay, so the science is correct. The science isn't saying an ice age is imminent. Okay, there are Newsweek articles maybe and Time Magazine articles, publishers want to get people to buy their magazine, and they sometimes exaggerate things. You might find, butter is good for you, and, tobacco is not so bad, and you might find these kinds of things in popular literature. But I think your mistake is that you fault all of science for you found a Time Magazine article that misrepresented what the science says, and now you can discount all science. You can do that with smoking, asbestos, anything you want to talk about. So John, look at the science, and if you do, you won't find this claim of an imminent ice age. It's true of global cooling, and it's true of all kinds of things. Global cooling, it's a different story. There was a disagreement back in the 70s, which most scientists expected warming, but there was a minority that wasn't taken too seriously that said global cooling would happen, and so they were wrong. But now we have the measurements and the data. If you look at the science, the science predictions have been awesome. Repeated, correct predictions, not dramatic, fire, everyone's going to be dead. That exaggerated stuff you find in popular media is not in science. The science is good. You should trust the science. Greta is right.
All right, and let me tell you something, and I understand that you believe that, and I'm glad that you do. You and I respectfully disagree with each other. The science does not show this. It's the evolutionary scientists that are reading the science this way, and they're interpreting it this way, and they're making these predictions that they have not been accurate about. This was not some tiny fringe, minority back in the 1970s that was making these kinds of claims. And if you're going to say that, well, Time and Newsweek and the rest of the media, they're trying to sell magazines. Okay, you mean like today when they're trying to sell magazines and saying global warming catastrophes coming our way? Why don't you say they're trying to just sell magazines today? I mean, the bottom line is the same thing they're reporting now is the same thing they reported then, but the difference is it's burning up now versus freezing up then. That's what they were saying, and that's the point that I've been making about this, all right? The predictions that they have been making, so I don't know how you can see that they have been remarkably accurate. They have been remarkably wrong. In 2006, we were told, John, were we or not, were we told in 2006 that we need to, that we are going to see a dramatic increase in the frequency of hurricanes hitting the United States and a frequency of major hurricanes, Category 3 or above, hitting the United States? We know, we were told this in 2006 after the hurricane series that happened back then. They told us they happened that year. They said we're going to continue to see this year after year after year. You know what that means?
Every year.
Next
there won't
year.
be 1 year that has less hurricanes.
I didn't say that. What I said was this is what we're going to continue to see. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. And
yes,
in 2006,
we don't know yet.
In 2006, John, in 2006, okay, we had a lot of bad hurricanes in 2006. All right, they said this is because of the global warming, climate change, and it's just going to get worse year after year after year. Well, guess what? We didn't just have one down year. We had 10 down years where there was not one single Category 3 or above hurricane that hit the United States for a 10-year stretch. We have never had a dry spell like that in the history of record keeping in the United States back to the mid 1800s. Okay, I mean their predictions have been demonstrably wrong, and I just
there's been so many.
We're just going to disagree with each other on this, John. What?
There's been so many super accurate predictions from climate scientists, like the polar vortex. It was shown on a map in 2010. You know, where they said the Arctic ice is going to be getting smaller and smaller. We can see that. Go to YouTube and at NASA and watch as the Arctic ice shrinks. They said that the oceans would get warmer, that the sea levels would rise, the corals would die, that that we're losing.
Okay,
this is a crazy one.
Let's talk about John. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Okay.
Okay. No, one is really key.
Well, you just did. You just did. Okay. About the Arctic ice. Okay. Let's talk about the Arctic ice that you brought up. All right. We were told that the polar bears are going to go extinct. All right. You do realize from a few years ago, from 10 years ago, when we were told the polar bears were going to go extinct, we saw those sad, heart-wrenching pictures of that poor polar bear trying to survive on that tiny little iceberg. You do realize that the polar bear population has increased by almost 50% since then. You do realize that the coast.
What happened is, Bob, that they miscalculated. They estimated the number of polar bears back then. So today we have a better estimate. It's a higher number than it was in the past.
Oh, come on. They couldn't count polar bears 10 years ago, John? They couldn't count polar bears 10 years ago? Come on. John, look. Okay, you know what? The coastlines are supposed to be flooded, okay? The sea levels are supposed to rise. Can I right now, here's what you do, okay? Here's what you do. You go along the west coast and the east coast of the United States and count how many houses are older than 10 years old that are right there on the beach. And you want to know what you're going to see?
They weren't saying those would be gone. They weren't saying that those would be gone.
They said the sea levels are going to rise. John, they said the sea levels are going to rise. Florida's going to be underwater. Okay, Washington, D.C. will be underwater.
Why are sea levels rising? 3 millimeters per year. Why are sea levels rising?
John, what I'm telling you is they are not rising. They are not. They are not. Look at the coastlines. Right. Okay. It's this simple, John. Look at the coastline right now. Take a picture of any house on any of the eastern coastlines right now. Then take a picture of that. Look at a picture of that very same house from 10 or 20 years ago, and you see if you don't have the same amount of coastline, the same amount of beach between that house and the water. Okay, you're going to see, John, that they are.
It's been only a millimeter per year in the past, and now it's only at 3 millimeters.
And what I'm telling you is, you're talking about insignificant numbers. The Obamas just
up.
John,
it's going up now.
John, it's going up and it's going down, up and down, up and down.
Going down.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. As the ice freezes and melts, you see an up and down, but you see it in such a negligible amount. All you have to do is look at the photographs of those very houses that are right now on the coastline that have been there for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Go back and look at a photograph of those very same houses on that very same coastline and look at the same level of beach. The Obamas just bought a $15 million mansion on Martha's Vineyard that's supposedly going to be underwater in not too long. I mean, you're falling for these arguments. I'm not buying it. You're buying it. We disagree with each other. I've given you a lot of time, but I got to move on, John. I'm not going to let it be the Bob and John show, okay? I do have other callers. We disagree with each other, okay? And we'll agree to disagree. But I do appreciate your call,
okay.
All right?
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, take care. Folks, you're listening to the Bob Dutko Show. More